Welcome back, listener. I'm your host, Carrion, and tonight I have an acrophobia-inducing tale of horror. With voice work by Jeramy B and story by Shane Sellers, I present Terror at 2,000 Feet.
The transmission tower we were tasked with repairing stood in the middle of a deserted Dakota field, a lonely sentinel against the vast expanse of the prairie. It was a colossal structure, more than 2,000 feet tall, and climbing it took us over 2 hours of grueling effort. My coworkers, Wesley, Jeff, and I had ventured into the heart of nowhere to tackle this job, our shared passion for heights and a huge payday driving us to take on the challenge. Wesley was the most experienced among us, a wiry man in his 40s with a salt and pepper beard that hinted at his years of climbing. He had a calm and methodical approach to his work, which often served as a grounding influence on Jeff and me. Wesley had a soft spot for nature photography and would often capture breathtaking shots of the landscapes we encountered during our travels. Jeff, on the other hand, was the youngest of the trio and had an adventurous spirit that knew no bounds. His vibrant personality could brighten even the darkest of days, and he had an uncanny ability to make friends wherever he went. Jeff was a thrill seeker, always eager to take on new challenges and explore uncharted territory. As we ascended the tower, the world below seemed to recede further and further into the distance. The vast plains stretched out beneath us, a patchwork of green and gold with no signs of civilization in sight. The wind whispered through the grass, and the occasional cry of a hawk echoed in the stillness. Wesley, always the one to maintain a level head, broke the silence.
This is quite the climb, isn't it? But the view will be worth it.
Jeff, with his boundless enthusiasm, chimed in. Big climb, big bonus. This is what we live for, guys. Making money, breaking hearts, and living on the edge. I nodded, my excitement building as we neared the summit. Just a bit farther, and we'll be on the top of the world. When we finally reached the summit, a sense of awe washed over us. We were standing atop a towering monolith, a metal giant that pierced the sky. The solitude was eerie, as if the world had disappeared, leaving only the three of us in this immense tower. Jeff couldn't contain his excitement. Look at this, guys! Can you believe it? We're on the top of the world! Wesley chuckled, his voice calm and reassuring.
Take it all in, Jeff. It's a rare sight, and not many people get to experience it.
Looking out into the distance, clouds obscured the landscape below, and the blue sky reached past the horizon. I clipped my safety strap to a support beam and sat down, taking a deep breath as I pulled my tool bag up the rest of the way. Both Wesley and Jeff reclined against the metal rigging, enjoying the view. Okay, guys, we've got about an hour to switch out the light bulbs and install the new signal booster. If everything goes smoothly, we'll be in town for beers by sundown. You buying? Jeff said with a wide smile across his face. Fuck no, you cheap bastard, I said, holding up my middle finger. Jeff laughed and shook his head. Okay, boss man, time for work. We began our work, replacing the light bulbs carefully and ensuring the old bulbs were safely packed into a padded bag for protection on our descent. Wesley concentrated on installing the new booster and cleaning the patchwork of cables that led to the main circuit. As I was replacing my third light bulb, the sky above darkened, and the atmosphere grew heavy with an approaching storm.
What's going on with this weather?
Wesley muttered, his voice trembling with unease. The meteorologist report made no mention of storms today, I said, looking back to Wesley. Jeff, the most fearless of us, laughed it off. It's just a little rain, guys. What's the big deal? But it wasn't just rain that concerned me. It was the towering shadow that passed overhead, blocking out the fading sunlight. I glanced up, my heart pounding, and my eyes widened in horror. There, circling above us, was an enormous bird, its wingspan rivaling the height of the transmission tower. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before, a creature from a nightmare. Is that a fucking plane? Jeff exclaimed, his bravado gone in an instant. The bird's feathers crackled with energy, and it emitted an eerie, otherworldly aura. It was as if it had been summoned by the storm itself. The world around us seemed to blur as the creature circled, waiting for something. Wesley, usually the voice of reason, was pale with fear.
We need to get off this tower. Where's the thunder? There's lightning,
he said, trying to sound composed. Panic was gnawing at the edges of my mind, and we couldn't afford to be paralyzed by fear. Wesley was right. The safe thing to do was to descend before the winds got too strong. I'm calling it, guys. Anchor your tools and police up your area. We need to climb down. Reluctantly, we turned our attention back to the tower, securing cables and setting up equipment. The first raindrops fell, and wind howled around us. Thunder rumbled, and lightning lit up the darkening sky, revealing the massive bird above, its eyes fixed on us. As we secured the last remaining pieces of equipment, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every time I glanced up, I kept expecting to see the bird's unblinking eyes staring back at me. Then, with a deafening screech, the large bird descended upon us. I barely had time to react as it swooped past me, its immense wings creating a powerful gust of wind. It had taken Wesley. I watched in helpless horror as the bird carried him into the stormy sky, his screams fading into the distance. Jeff and I were left stunned, unable to comprehend what had just happened.
We need to get down from here!
Jeff shouted, his voice quaking with fear.
We have to call for help!
I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. We abandoned our equipment and began our descent, moving as quickly as we could down the tower. The storm raged around us, rain drenching us and lightning striking perilously close. But the bird wasn't done with us. It circled above, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As we descended, it made its move. With blinding speed, it swooped down and snatched Jeff from the ladder, his cries of panic quickly dissipating into the dark clouds. Tears streamed down my face as I continued to descend. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. I had to make it to the ground, to safety. I couldn't let their deaths be in vain. Finally, I reached the bottom of the tower, my hands trembling as I unhooked my harness. I stumbled away from the tower, collapsing onto the wet ground, gasping for breath. I had survived, but at a terrible cost. Hours later, the storm had passed, and rescue teams arrived to search for Wesley and Jeff, but there was no sign of them. No trace of the monstrous bird. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. I was questioned by authorities, but they didn't believe my story. They thought I had imagined the giant bird in my panic. They chalked up the disappearances of my co-workers to the sudden storm that had struck without warning. I was left with no choice but to return to my normal life, haunted by the memories of that fateful day. I had lost my friends, and my passion for heights had turned into a paralyzing fear. Months passed, and I tried to move on, but the nightmares wouldn't let me forget. I had dreamt of the giant bird, its eyes filled with malevolent intelligence, and its thunderous screeches echoing in my ears. Then, one day, Wesley and Jeff were found, or rather, what was left of them. A 60-year-old man was cleaning his pool when, splash, an arm fell from the sky. It had Jeff's smartwatch still wrapped around the wrist. Then, 20 miles away, during a wedding reception, what was left of Wesley came crashing down on the maid of honor. Poor woman never knew what hit her. The authorities were baffled. The injuries on their bodies suggested they had been carried by a powerful force and dropped from a great height. But there were no witnesses, and the giant bird remained a mystery. I knew the truth, though. The legendary Thunderbird was real, and it had claimed my friends as its prey. It was a creature of myth and nightmares, a terror that had defied explanation, and I was the only one who had witnessed its wrath and lived to tell the tale. I'm haunted by the memories of that day, by the sight of that monstrous bird and the loss of my friends. I can never forget the feeling of helplessness as I watched them being snatched from the tower, their lives taken by a creature that should have remained in the realm of legend.
This has been a Carrion Creature Feature production. If you enjoyed our sky-high horror, then be sure to subscribe and click on the bell for more terror-inducing stories. Until next time, watch the skies and be mindful of thunder.